Welcome to the AZ Political Podcast. I'm Jim Sharpe, and our headlines this week. We'll start with headline number one. Even though he mostly bid adieu to his time in the White House, Joe Biden's farewell speech this week, a tradition started by George Washington, was also about saying goodbye to a 5-decade-plus career in public office, which saw him serve as a junior, then a senior U.S. senator from Delaware, vice president, and of course, eventually president. A career that started when he was elected to the county council in New Castle County, Delaware, in 1970. Headline number two, fresh off delivering her State of the State address, Arizona Governor Katie Hobbs spoke more about her plans for the upcoming year on the Chris and Joe show here on KTAR. She wants the legislature to work on housing and water solutions, saying lawmakers need to work across the aisle. I think I might have heard that term somewhere before. What I think she really meant is that she'll have to work across the aisle as Republican majorities in the legislature grew in last November's election, begging the question, will she break the record that she set and veto more than 143 bills in a single legislative session? And headline number three, shortly after announcing in her State of the State address that border security needs to be a priority for the state, and the day before announcing more than $17 million in funding to support local law enforcement at the border, Katie Hobbs met with Mexico's foreign minister, Juan Ramón de la Fuente Ramirez, and he told her his government's hired immigration attorneys to work at the more than 50 Mexican consulates throughout the U.S., including here in Phoenix, to defend migrants' rights. All right, let's meet our guest on the AZ Political Podcast is former Maricopa County Supervisor, former City Councilman, Phoenix City Councilman Bill Gates, who is now the director of the ASU Mechanics of Democracy Laboratory and a professor of practice at ASU Watts College of Public Service of Community Solutions. So do I call you Councilman, Supervisor, Professor, Director?
How about Bill?
Okay, that works.
We've known each other a long time.
Yeah, so. Yeah, and I gave him a little bit of a bad time as he was walking into the studios. I'm like, you got the professorial beard going on now.
Absolutely. It felt like I had to do it. Yeah. Professor beard or J.D. Vance beard, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, no.
Depending upon your political perspective,
right,
I guess.
Right. Well, now that you become a liberal professor and stuff, So I got to ask you, what's been tougher during your lifetime, getting your law degree, teaching political science now, or the 8 years you served on the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors?
Oh, definitely my law degree.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no, that was very proud to be a lawyer. It was hard. I enjoyed it. But it was very challenging because, lawyers will talk about, it gives you a different way of thinking, a different way of viewing the world. I've even compared it to the Matrix. You get that pill and you see, you really understand the world a lot more. But especially, I think the age that I was, when I showed up in law school, I was 21 years old. And so to take that on, that was tricky. Having a few miles on your tires helps, but all three of those have been great experiences.
Where did you grow up?
Grew up all over the place, actually. Moved around a lot. My dad, I tell people my dad was Homer Simpson. We'd go and build a nuclear plant and move to the next place. But I came here for high school. And so the 4 years I spent at Deer Valley High School was actually the longest I'd ever lived anywhere. So like a lot of people, I'm kind of from somewhere else. It's just, I'm not from really one place in particular, but this year it'll be 40 years that I've been in the Valley.
Wow. Yeah, I tell people I wasn't born in Arizona, but I got here as fast as I could.
There you go.
Age 11. So yeah, we lived all over the place before that too. Did Donald Trump winning the election nationwide in Arizona bring a sense of relief to you after everything that you went through over the 2020 election?
That's not the term I would use, sense of relief. I mean, honestly, I think there was a sense of relief in that it was not particularly close. But I think, and certainly the way that people responded to it, those who are on the losing side, certainly there have been some people who have questioned, they said there was Starlink was involved, or something like that, but nothing like what we experienced in 2020 and 2022. So I was happy for election workers, not only here in Maricopa County, but around the country, that they have not, over the past couple of months had to deal with what they've had to deal with over the last 4 years. But unfortunately, I think that, if we think election challenges are over and that, things are just going to be smooth from here on out, that is a pretty naive view of things.
Is it because people see it as a way to make money?
Yeah, unfortunately, that's what we have seen. There has been a cottage industry that has popped up over questioning elections. And let me be clear, Jim, I have no problem with questions about elections. It's one of my favorite topics, right? Love to talk about it. People have legitimate questions that are asked in good faith. We've tried really hard at Maricopa County to be transparent, and hopefully we've educated people about elections the way that they never have been before. So I have no problem with that. The problem I have is with literally people knowing the answer and continuing to raise questions in an effort to either raise money, which I think is despicable, or to boost up their political prospects, which is also despicable.
Yeah, it's rather unfortunate. Did you ever encounter this type of situation? I won't ask you to name names, but I feel like I did. Having worked in Republican politics like I did for a short while, having Republicans basically say behind closed doors, hey, I know exactly how this went, but dude, I gotta take a certain line in public. Did that ever happen to you? Like behind closed doors, somebody said, hey, I know this is the truth, but then outwardly they were also saying, you guys at Maricopa County, you messed this all up and you ripped us off.
Many times.
Really?
Many times that happened. Or others who were silent in the face of unfair, untruthful accusations, but would come up and say, hey, keep up the good work. Keep up doing what you're doing.
Wow.
But not defending us. And I mean, I would say that's a lot of people, unfortunately. And that for me, and I've been very open about my struggles that I had because of this. And that was the number one driver to the whatever you want to call it, trauma, anguish, was the frustration and the sheer utter disbelief that these people who'd known me for years, decades, some of them, I'd worked on their campaigns, they had helped me with my campaigns, and that those people were just gone. They were not there to defend the election workers of Maricopa County, my colleagues and I, as our integrity was being attacked on a daily basis. That was the hardest part for me. Of course, the death threats are not pleasant, especially when you have a family. That's very hard. But for me, that just people deserting us and deserting our workers and calling us a laughing stock or saying that we're criminals, traitors, rhinos. Of course, as you know, Jim, the worst thing you can be called if you're a Republican. All those things, they were very hard to deal with, and still hard to believe that all this happened.
Was your decision to step away from public office, was that made essentially, well, was that decision built, at least started to be built in 2020, and then by the time 2022 happened, you're just like, look, this is it, I'm done?
So it was a complicated, a lot of factors that went into it. As you know, I've served in elected office for 15 years. And so at some point you have to decide, okay, when is the right time to move on? For me, my 8 years at Maricopa County, I felt like my colleagues and I accomplished a lot. We actually had a very conservative voting record. People don't talk about that much.
Right.
But, whether we're talking about issues in particular, fiscal policy, property tax cuts year after year. But between that, the experiences we had with COVID, the work that we had to do there, and then with elections, it felt like the right time. But I want to be clear that I wasn't driven out by anyone or anything. But it was a decision that I made with my family. A lot of talk, a lot of prayer, a lot of consideration. And I'm at peace with that decision. I feel good about where Maricopa County is at. I feel really good about the future there. But for for me now, this new chapter is something I'm really excited about. I'm in the right place at the right time. Feel so fortunate to be working on something that I have great passion for, and that's our elections and the future voters and election workers and hopefully election administrators.
I'm going to tell a story in a couple of minutes here about how I consider Supervisor Gates to be my one and only political rival ever. But first, let's talk about your new role as Professor Gates.
Yes.
How's that feel? And what do you have in mind for your students?
Yeah, so it's going great. There's a lot of different elements to it. That's right. I'm a professor of practice at Arizona State University. So I'm actually teaching an introductory political science course right now. And what a time to be doing it. Yeah. I mean, an amazing time. Obviously, we have President-elect Trump taking office on Monday. I'll be teaching class later today. So I'll tell them, hey, watch the inauguration on Monday. So quite an interesting time there. But then in addition, my role as the director of the Mechanics of Democracy Laboratory, or as we like to call it, model, is we're working there to train the next generation of elections workers and elections administrators. And we feel like there's no better place to do it than in downtown Phoenix, which is where we're based, just like less than a mile away from Maricopa County Tabulation Center, and where we're working to develop an undergraduate and graduate curriculum to learn from the experiences that we've had over the past few years and prepare that next generation for what's happening, the changes that are coming, the scrutiny that we have on elections, and also to speak out to and push back against misinformation, as that is put out there, unfortunately, by some.
Yeah, a lot, unfortunately. So will you be leading field trips over to the tabulation center?
Yeah. Oh, yes. Okay. Absolutely. That will be an important part is getting the exposure to elections here in Maricopa County, elsewhere in the state. We'll also be hosting convenings of experts in elections administrators, to talk about the issues of the day. Like, for example, the big issue right now that we know is being discussed down at the state legislature and elsewhere is the time that it takes to tabulate our votes in Arizona. Right. And so we'll be convening folks to have that conversation. And, the information that you put out here on KTAR and elsewhere in the media is wonderful. But in those convenings, we'll have an opportunity to sit down and really break down these issues and what all is involved and what it means if we make changes to election law. Because as you know, we have a tradition now going back to the early 90s on how we do mail-in voting, early voting. And as we make changes, which I certainly think, I'm certainly open to it, but you need to be careful that, you don't have unintended consequences that occur. And so we hope to play that part too, to really have a deep discussion of where we're headed with elections and how we can continue to really be a leader in elections, because that's our tradition here in Maricopa County and in Arizona.
Did your time as supervisor, you worked with Adrian Fontes when he was Maricopa County recorder, kind of restructured how the elections department works. And then you guys were telling the same story after the 2020 and the 2022 elections. You were on the same page. Did that give you a more of a sense of bipartisanship, or are you more willing? I mean, I'm not asking you if you're throwing away your principles of, smaller government and those types of things, but did it give you more of a taste of, hey, this is what America's supposed to be? We're supposed to be working with each other, even if we don't agree on a lot of stuff.
Well, I consider myself, I always have a conservative Republican. I have principles that I believe in. I believe that my voting record supports that, both at the city council and at the board of supervisors. But interestingly, Jim, that bipartisan work that Adrian Fontes did with the board, for me, that was my comfort zone, because at the Phoenix City Council, that's what we did. I mean, it's a nonpartisan race. I mean, I am a Republican. I told people that I was a Republican, but I didn't have that R KTAR next to my name. And my job is particularly in local government. There's very few issues that are partisan, right? The old story is, a Democrat can fill a pothole just like a Republican. So I had a great experience working with Democrats across the aisle, as well as my Republican colleagues on the city council. So really doing this work was very natural to me. And I'd say Jack Sellers, having that background from the Chandler City Council, also was very comfortable working in that way. And really, all my colleagues showed that. So to me, that shouldn't be the exception, the bipartisanship. That should be the rule. There should only be a few. Of course, we have different principles. We're not going to agree on everything. But the way that the 4 Republicans worked with the 1 Democrat, Steve Gallardo, on the Board of Supervisors, I'm very proud of that.
Yeah. Our guest last week was John Giles, former mayor of Mesa. Yeah. And we talked about, in some ways, how it's better for voters and public officials' psyche if our national political scene was run like local politics is run.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But unfortunately, we have seen going all the way down to school board level that actually partisanship is creeping more into local government. Yeah. So I think it's incumbent upon our local leaders to continue to say, hey, we're solutions oriented and we're willing to reach across the aisle and work together to provide the best services to our residents. That's the job in local government. After your stint in academia, any thoughts about returning to public office, or is that chapter gone? I mean, obviously, you can't. I did this for 15 years, so never say never. But this is what I really have a passion for. This is, I think, a way that we can have a legacy. But if there's any way I can help in this community, I'm not going anywhere. I'm thrilled. My office is in downtown Phoenix, which is really gratifying for me because I was on the city council, for example, when we worked to bring the ASU Law School to downtown Phoenix, and it's such a vibrant place, and I'm thrilled to just play a very small part of that as on the city council, and now I'm sort of around it every day while I'm down there on the campus. Really proud of that partnership between the city of Phoenix and ASU. It's been remarkable. Selfishly, I hope there might be a return to politics, so I might have a chance to beat the pants off him, because here's the story. It's 2009, and and Councilman Gates, member on the city council, resigned, I think became state land director. That's correct. Yeah. And so there was a small, 3-month gap, I want to say, before the end of the year. And I said, you know what? This is my shot. I want to just do my part for God and country and just, serve those 3 months. And so I actually went to Phil Gordon, who was mayor at the time, and I sat down with him. I sat down with, I think, just about every member of the city council. And I said, hey, I just want to do this now. And every single one of them, including Mayor Gordon, said, are you not going to run for the office then when the election comes up? I said, no, I don't really want to do that. And by the way, I think the deadline was within a day or two to have to register to run. Yeah. And, well, first off, Mayor Gordon, all he wanted to talk about was, why did Bruce Jacobs leave the radio station? I'm like, can we talk about something? But then I pretty much got the idea that I wasn't going to be appointed because the city council appointed that missing member. And when I arrived at the council chambers, there's Mr. Gates sitting there, and they all went with him. And I walked out just completely devastated, and I had to resume my media career. Well, I feel bad for Phoenix because of that. But not everyone, if you recall, Jim, not everyone was there behind me. It was a very interesting vote. So they, made the motion for my name, and there were some yeses and some nos. So it was 4-3, and I needed 5 votes to be appointed to the city council. And I'll never forget Phil Gordon, who was wonderful, wonderful mayor, great guy guy to serve with, he said, well, I told everyone if somebody had 4 votes, I would be their 5th vote. So I vote aye for Bill Gates. So with that resounding endorsement, I became a member of the city council, and I did have to run just a few months later, and ran I guess 3 times there, and was reelected. And what a wonderful job to do. You're so close to the people as a councilman, and everybody understands what you do. People are like, you're a supervisor? What do you supervise?
You're the city council.
It's like, but city council, they understand city councilman, they understand mayor, and representing Sunny Slope and Moon Valley, all the wonderful neighborhoods in District 3. It was a blast.
Yeah, ended up being my city council member, and then you were my supervisor too. Even after I moved just a slight ways away, but I appreciate your time in office. I appreciate your standing up for the truth, and it's been so hard to punch out of this misinformation sometimes and not be accused of siding with one side or the other, when it's really the truth is the truth, right?
Well, that's right. And Jim, I just appreciate what you've done. And really everyone here at KTAR has just done a great job of putting the facts out there. And I can't tell you how much that means to us. It means to the workers in the elections department to know that somebody's out there telling the truth and letting people decide. And you have voices from all across the spectrum here. And just, Mike Broomhead was a wonderful place that Clint Hickman and I and Stephen Richer were able to go and kind of speak to, our base, right? We're Republicans. And then he'd have Karen Fann on the next day. And that's the way it should be. So I appreciate that. And to me, I feel like there's nothing more important that I could have done professionally than the opportunity to be there in Maricopa County and to just put the facts out there for people and let them decide and protect those workers who were so unfairly maligned, those election workers who do incredible work and work in those 16 and 18-hour days, during elections, and then being threatened and harassed online and awful. In person.
Yeah. By the way, I'm going to contest that 2009 vote on the city council.
Never too late.
Right? I got Phil Gordon's number. I'm calling him right now. Thank you so much. Bill Gates, pleasure.
Thank you. Yeah. Really enjoyed it.
No, I enjoyed it as well. And I am really glad you joined us today on the AZ Political Podcast. I'm Jim Sharpe. I'll see you soon.
Thanks for watching the AZ Political Podcast with Jim Sharpe. Click the box to watch more from KTAR News and tap the button in the middle to subscribe.